All right, we're going to call to order the January 28th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, the Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the West Sacramento Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight is going to be led by Jeff Mitchell. All right, the council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our real property negotiator regarding 4 matters. I think the items are listed in the agenda, but they're Port of West Sacramento, Texas Patel, West Sacramento Housing Development Corporation, and Jamboree Housing and DNS Development. No action was taken. Also to confer with our legal counsel regarding 1 matter of existing litigation with the Buckeye Terminals LLC, and to confer with our legal counsel regarding 1 matter of potential initiation of litigation. No action was taken on that item either. All right, so that brings us to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, the council is prohibited by state law from taking action or having a discussion on items that are brought forward under item 1A, but is an important opportunity for public forum on items within our jurisdiction. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the council on this or any other item to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and to turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be heard. And so to that end, we ask that all comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the clerk is a flip chart, and that chart simply indicates which item the council is currently considering. The yellow cards, the clerk takes the yellow cards up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. So for example, if you're here for item 13, and you want to speak on that item, just need to get the card into the clerk before the staff report is completed. Once the council's discussion or questions or the public comment has begun, we don't take any additional cards. We also recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can cause anxiety or hives or other bad consequences. So we just ask that there not be any boos or catcalls or actually even any other applause or other demonstrations, and we try to maintain a neighborly civil discourse here in the chambers while still being passionate about whatever might have brought you here. So with that, we have a couple of requests to speak under item 1A, and the first is by Bill Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. William Lowell, West Sacramento, for the record. And at last Thursday's regional transit meeting in Sacramento, at the advisory committee meeting, they had this new bus on display. And as you probably have seen, the front 12 seats, instead of double seats, they're single seats and they flip so that like in the seat behind the front seat, you can flip that aisle seat or the one next to the window and put your small or medium-sized shopping cart or suitcase in there without blocking the aisle. And I'm hoping that our YOLO buses will be able to secure a lot of that seating without having to change buses and make it more convenient for the non-wheelchair users with special needs. And also, I'm still hopeful that that bus shelter over on Reed Avenue near Interstate 80 westbound, I'm hoping that we can relocate that over to the Social Security office where we have no benches or no shelters, but we oftentimes see people waiting there for the bus that are in walkers and wheelchairs and so forth. And so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We've shared the photos with the council, in particular with Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma, who is the city's representative to the Yellow Bus Board. Charles Castorina.
Mind if people come with me?
Sure.
Mayor and City Council members, I am Charles Castorina, and I'm the president of the League of Latin American Citizens of Yolo County Progressive Council. In September 2014, the Bright Park Master Plan and Implementation Plan was approved by our LULAC Council as a high priority since many of us participate in the visioning event in 2008. Over the past couple of months, we have reached out to you, Director of Parks and Recreation, the City School 2x2 Committee, the Superintendent and School Board of Washington Unified School District, owner of the park, and more importantly, the community to make the master plan a reality. As you know, Bright Park is used by both West Sacramento residents and non-residents alike and serves over 1,500 people on Saturdays during the soccer season alone. While we are cognizant that the initial master plan to upgrade the park with several amenities was overreaching given to the economic conditions back in January of 2014, and as such, the council did not identify the master plan as a priority. Given this stronger economic climate on the rise, we believe, as do hundreds of park users whose faces are mirrored in their signatures in these letters and surveys I am presenting to you tonight. It is the time to identify the new Phase 1 presented to you in April 2014 as a priority again in 2015. And while we are pleased that some work is being done on the restroom facilities as a short-term fix, park users and the hard work of the residents who give of their time informing the vision to the upgrades they desired for Bright Park deserve the Bright Park Master Plan Phase 1 to be taken off the table and move forward. In addition to the letters and surveys referenced earlier, this petition is being submitted to you on behalf of the community, urging you to aggressively seek funding mechanisms, including appropriating monies from the West Riverview LLC groupie settlement of $2.6 million. Since there has only been one grant that would have been a good fit for this project, and given the grant's criteria for a conservation easement and other formal actions being required by the city and school district, this will not happen by the grant deadline of February 3rd, 2015. We are urging that the city and school district all make this a priority and get together this year and work these issues out, so by the end of the year of 2015, we can apply for the above grant. For all these reasons, we respectfully urge you to make Bright Park Master Plan not just a vision, but a reality.
All right, thank you.
Awesome.
And Madam Clerk. All right, thank you, and thanks for folks who came out tonight on the project. We've also gotten a report, I think, from our Parks Director, and I want to be very clear because I think our Parks Director may not have been. This is a very high priority for the council. Our strategic plan priorities, the ones that show up on the wall, are not an indication, they're not a list of what the most important things are to the city at the moment. Those are all important things, but we don't rank the top highest priority things for the city to happen in our community. Those are simply a list of items first that the city council has to take action on. That Bright Park is not one of those because we've already taken action, very strong endorsement of the plan, endorsement of the strategy, and commitment, reservation of those Westview monies for implementation of that plan over time. So there's those are issues where the council has difficult policy decisions to make. Bright Park is not one of them. There's very strong support on the council and with our partners at the school district and the county in order to achieve the park. So it doesn't appear on that, but that's because that was already been done. That part of the process has been completed. It is now with our city manager and the staff team to identify every possible grant opportunity. The one that you described for sure, but many others as well. And so the work is really about finding one or more appropriate grant opportunities. What we don't want to do is use the limited amount of money, and we've talked about this before, but we can't use the settlement funds, just bleed them out a little bit at a time, because that will result in spending money for improvements of the park that are important, but that won't be visible. They'll be the very basics. And so we'll have a slightly better park than we had before if we spent all the money now. But we won't achieve the kind of transformation that the community desired and envisioned when we put the plan together. And so we really want to make sure, because we won't get that settlement again. We won't. That was the first and the last settlement we've gotten like that in the city's 28-year history. So we're committed to the project for sure at the council, and our staff team definitely knows the priority that this is for the community and for the city to achieve. So we'll be working towards that next grant opportunity, but also others that will emerge in the coming months. I think we at our last meeting, we had a quick discussion about cap and trade and a variety of other non-traditional grant sources in addition to the more mainstream park grants. So we will be, our intention is to deliver the project, but we're trying to play a smart game here with the potential grant sources so that we can get as close as possible to the grander vision that the Park Master Plan committed all of us to accomplish. If there are issues between the city and the school district that we need to resolve, then we certainly, Mr. City Manager, I know the council will want to do that. So if that's one of the hurdles for particular grants, then I would hope that you and the superintendent, and if necessary, the two by two are aware and are ready to get to work on resolving those, so we're not disadvantaging ourselves in a grant application. All right, so that's all of our requests to speak under item 1A. Item 1B is communications and assignments. Are there any reports of the communications this evening? Mr. Johannesson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think it's been a while since we've reported these. I'll try to make these brief. The West Sacramento Housing Development Corporation met on September 11th, and the main issue there, we went to our usual review of the properties and the status of the properties, but it was really the Delta Lane project, which the Development Corporation was looking at becoming involved with. And there we discussed the potential, the cost overruns and what to do from an organizational perspective. There was no action taken at that time. On January 13th, the Yolo County Air Quality Management District met. I was appointed to the Yolo Corridor, or the Yolo Corridor Funds Committee, or Clean Air Funds Committee, which is basically a committee to look at how the clean air funds are spent throughout the district. We also heard a presentation in SB4, which became effective, I believe, this year, that deals with disclosure of fracking, of substances used in fracking. So the district doesn't really have any oil production, so that's not really an issue. It does have some natural gas production, but really in terms of how it affects this district, it's really just some of the equipment that's needed and some of the disclosures and partnerships that, or the memorandums of understanding that have to be entered between the California Department of Conservation and California Resource Board. Yolo County Housing met actually twice since the last meeting. And so the main issue there, we've had a year in review, and again, it's the Housing Authority has been very active, not only with the programs that are operating locally, but also our executive director has been very active outside the area and speaking at different areas on what we're actually doing. And I think probably the two main issues there were the formation of a JPA, which we talked about at the 2x2 today, and I could talk out a little bit about that. Basically, it's a restructuring the housing authority away from this kind of housing authority supervisor kind of model, the confusion and unclarity that happens with that, to have its own self-standing entity with appointees from the different jurisdictions. This council will be getting information on that, I think, in 2 weeks or so. And then also we heard a report on bridge to housing. So rather than go through that report at the Housing Authority today, I also attended the City County 2x2, and the two issues there were this joint powers authority with Yolo County Housing, and a lot of the other jurisdictions, I think all the other jurisdictions except West Sac have received a presentation on this, so we should be getting that shortly. So, and on the bridge to housing, it was basically an update. We're talking about now having a little more clear idea of what's been accomplished by that program, and also what still needs to be accomplished by that program, and knowing that this is going to be a time-limited pilot project. So there's, we'll be producing a list of things that have happened because of this project. And there's, I mean, to date, for example, basically 100% of the folks there have gotten health care coverage, which is huge. We have a lot of folks that are now being able to get government assistance because they've had a place to apply, which helps them find housing. We've had, I think, 6 vouchers that have been issued to date, and they're looking at possibly another 13 today, so that's about 19. There's 52 folks that are still in the facility. We'll see. We've still got some time left on this. I know there's an issue whether or not it's pulled or not on consent today on the additional funding, and we might be able to go into more detail at that time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johannesson. Other reports? Ms. Sandine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few reports. One was the Water Resources Association of Yolo County met on January 12th. And typically, we're kept up to date on water legislation and regulatory issues, as well as groundwater assessments. One of my colleagues from that board is here with us this evening, Tim O'Halloran, of the Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. On our agenda tonight, we have an item in our consent agenda, item 8, and member agencies of the Water Resources Association have been asked to pass resolution in support of the Water Resources Association is acting as a planning forum for development of a groundwater sustainability, for the development of a groundwater sustainability agency. So I'm sure you've seen that in our materials. We also, at that meeting on January 12th, received an update on the flood program from the City of West Sacramento by Eric Nagy of MBK Engineers, and we were given many kudos on the progress we've made on our flood program. We received at that meeting a year in review, and I will make sure that gets shared with the council members. That same evening on January 12th, I was able to attend the Yolo County Transportation District meeting on behalf, as the alternate, on behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma, who chairs that district. And I was appointed that evening as the Yolo County Transportation District representative to the Streetcar Policy Steering Committee. We also that night approved the Woodland Transit Study contract, and then we received a number of status reports on special projects such as the streetcar, which matters, as you know, to us, a bike share program that is moving forward soon. There's an RFP out to have a nonprofit work on developing a bike share program that will be in West Sac as well as Davis and other municipalities. Rail relocations, and also a countywide transportation plan. And my understanding is that our city managers will receive a more detailed briefings on the the countywide transportation plan. And I also got to see Mike Lucan in action in his new role that evening. And then last week, the Universal Preschool for West Sacramento, we had our executive board meeting. We welcomed new members to our board, which are Superintendent Jesse Ortiz, by virtue of his office, and then Washington Unified School District recently selected their representatives to the board, and Mary Leland of the Washington Unified School District joined us. I think importantly that evening, we received an update on the first 5 California funding, and we reviewed a proposed budget. There's anticipated very severe cuts to first 5, and then that will affect our program here. We reviewed a conceptual budget, and I have to hand it to our talented staff members here of being very creative, even facing possibly half the total budget to try to maintain the most important parts of the program. So it's coming to us a conceptual budget, and we move that forward, but we're hoping that there'll be some other solutions in the near term. And then finally this evening, a report for the Port Commission. We met and had items in closed session, and then the main order of business was to select new commission officers, and one of our colleagues, Supervisor Oscar Villegas, was selected as the commission chair, and I had the honor of being selected as the vice chair. That's my report.
All right, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I have a couple of reports. Congresswoman Matsui convened a meeting in the with the governor's office and a couple of members of the governor's cabinet 2 weeks ago on the streetcar project and around the state's necessary contribution in order to make the project successful, but also the state as an employer. So progress was made in that conversation with the state. It's important both for its own benefit because of the property owner vote in the city of Sacramento, that it's important that everyone that has a stake in it is paying their fair share, and so we made that point and discussed a lot of details with the state representatives. Congresswoman Metsui has been this is probably not she probably wouldn't like this word, but she's been a pit bull on this streetcar project, both with all our state partners and with the federal folks. And she's been making call after call, meeting after meeting, to keep everybody on track, and she's doing her best to try to assure that the project gets in the governor's, in President Obama's budget, which is expected to be released next week. There's no question it's an uphill battle to achieve that, but it would be a significant and essentially unexpected boost to the project if it's able to happen. So she's been pushing very hard and working the phones and the numbers in order to accomplish that. With not insubstantial amount of prodding from her, both Senator Feinstein and Senator Boxer have weighed in with the White House as well on this issue. And I met with the White House last week about the same topic. So there's a lot of work that's happening federally. Even if we're not successful, the groundwork that we're laying for next year's budget, which would be the really critical time for the project to move forward, because that would be the point at which we would be moving towards construction. We're laying the appropriate groundwork now for that to occur. So either way, it's not lost work, even if we don't succeed in making it into the president's budget. But one of our principal advantages right now is that there just aren't that many streetcar projects around the country. Just at this moment, a year ago there were 1 million. A year from now there might be 1 million of them. Right now, I think our friends estimate that there are about 3 or 4 streetcar projects in the country that are alive and making progress and kind of in our same state. So we're in the top 5 in the country, which is great because it means less competition. But we don't get through Congress if we don't get in the president's budget first. So hopefully that advocacy that's being led by Congresswoman Matsui will be successful. But as I say, even if it's not, it'll lay the groundwork for next year. So I was in D.C. last week for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. That's our annual winter meeting where we meet with the president and the vice president and members of his cabinet and other federal leaders about key policy areas. As the council knows, I lead the jobs, education, and workforce work. So my focus was principally in the area of college and career readiness, apprenticeships, and impact on local economic development, summer jobs, and other sorts of other strategies for youth employment as well. But also had some very productive sessions around water resources and municipal water infrastructure, around flood protection, and a variety of other topics. Simultaneously, the city manager and the deputy city manager, John Robinson, and I met with a variety of federal officials around many of the same topics. So we met with Congressman Garamendi about the port and the maintenance dredging project there, and he offered to assist us in that. He also re-raised his proposed concept around how to replace the Delta Tunnel project with a routing of the Delta conveyance through the Deepwater Channel. And he understands now that we might not support that option, but he was trying to raise it again. I told him, we don't like the tunnel. We're on record on the tunnels as well. We'd like to find alternatives too. But the real issue is what the consequences would be, both directly in terms of the potential viability of the port. Could we still operate a port if Southern California is worried about ships and everything else, plowing through its water supply, and also the impact on fisheries, also the impact on our land use, that the pumps that would be required in order to move water out of the river into the Deepwater Channel, that as he's scoped, although smaller than the pumps that the governor's proposed for the tunnels, they're still substantial at key development opportunities for waterfront that we have planned for our waterfront around the area where Southport and the Pioneer Bluffs area come together. And then finally, that level, that kind of infrastructure would invite us a an almost certainly unacceptable level of state intrusion into our entire community, that simply even the idea that the tunnels might be 20 miles from us caused the legislature to require that all of our local actions be subjected to the Delta Stewardship Council, like, without limitation, and that if we actually were if the most of the state's water passed through the city, that would get even worse. That we would almost certainly face lots of regulations from the state about what we could do all over the city, and that just wasn't acceptable. So we'll keep talking, but I want to make sure the council's aware it's still in his solution set around the Delta issues. We spent a lot of time with Congresswoman Matsui's staff on the streetcar and some of these other projects, and as the council knows, Congresswoman Matsui also invited me as her +1, her guest for the State of the Union address, which was a great honor. But she was using the opportunity to go around and tell every member of Congress that she could find how wonderful and impressive and exciting West Sacramento is, which was a pleasure to watch. One of our representatives that enthusiastic about this community that she felt she needed to tell everybody in Florida and Alaska and Illinois, God, you should see this West Sacramento. It's amazing what they're doing. There was definitely a lot of pride there, but her love for our community was definitely in evidence. Met with Congressman LaMalfa about the port as well, and with Letmon Lee, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy and Legislation in the Pentagon, which supervises the Army Corps of Engineers, both about the maintenance strategy, but principally about our flood protection project. A couple $2 billion project. That the Army Corps, the Deputy Assistant Secretary has been very, very helpful in terms of moving forward various pieces of the project, particularly the crediting issue that had been plaguing us for so long. So we wanted to let him know we appreciated his help and his follow-through on all of his commitments, and also making sure that he knew we still need his help to make sure that GRR gets done on time, that results in a chief's report that's timely enough so that we are ready to go when the next Water Resources Development Act comes forward. He continues to be a big pay a lot of attention to West Sacramento, which is terrific, because we've got to be one of the smallest cities in the country that is doing. I'm sure we're the smallest city in the country that is doing a $2.5 billion flood protection project, and they're giving us a lot of support and attention in the core leadership. So that was terrific. And we also met with the chiefs of staff for Senator Feinstein and Senator Boxer about all of these similar issues. So it was I thought it was a very productive session on a lot of scores on some key priorities for the city. So I don't know if you have anything to add about that, Mr. City Manager. Okay. All right. If there's no tomorrow the SACOG board is meeting, and one key issue that the board's going to be taking up is the criterion process for the cap and trade grants. So we should be significant competitors in that program. I hope we are. Tomorrow, I think it's Friday, that the criteria and process is going to get released from the state about cap and trade. But obviously exactly how we handle this as a region is going to have impacts for our competitiveness here in the city. I think we're being asked tomorrow to not have a regional ranking and prioritization process, which we have done in most other cases, but that's going to be the request that's before us. So for our staff, it would be helpful to get some feedback about what would be to our best advantage in terms of what SACOG does as well. So.
Couple to report on.
Yeah, Mr. Christoph.
The LAFCO met a couple weeks ago, and the major issue there is broadband, and LAFCO staff is going to be bringing the broadband issues to each one of the entities, Davis, Woodland, West Sacramento, Winters, and Davis, and they are and they will be vented, and it seems like broadband is a very good thing. It's an economic development tool that we'll be able to use, and so it'll be very interesting when they give their report to get feedback and to see what's going on. It really assists with the technology that we have today as far as computers and iPhones and all of the other things. Then last week, I met with Sacramento area flood control, and the major issue there is there are a number of property owners that are receiving offers for their land so that we can construct the levee around the city of West Sacramento and have better flood protection. And those property owners have received a number of the bids, and they are in the middle of either accepting or countering the offer, and negotiations are continuing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kristoff. All right, then that brings us to item 1C, which is appointments to boards and commissions. This is the traditional meeting when appointments are made to the various cities' boards and commissions. We received a lot of applications this cycle. We've been receiving more applications each 2-year cycle from residents of our community, who are willing and interested in serving in their community to help make the city better, which is terrific. I took the opportunity to interview quite a few of them, not every single applicant. What we could do when we were a quaint little town is no longer possible, but I interviewed a lot of applicants over several days in the city. And members of the council have all submitted nominations for several of the commissions as well. One of the, I think it's on our agenda later, but I wanted to pull it now, which is part of what has emerged from those conversations with the applicants and that we've had here at the council and at the staff level at other points has been what's a clear need to reset, to rethink some of the dimensions of and the contours of how our commissions are structured, which is mostly most of our commission structure was set close to when we incorporated, when a lot of our decisions were in a more narrow range around community services and what fees we were charging for parks programs and volunteers activities. We weren't mounting a $3 billion flood protection program. We weren't intending to operate one of the nation's few streetcar systems. We weren't building several bridges simultaneously. We just had a different scope of activity. One time, 10 years ago, Mr. Kristoff and I got together and recommended some changes to the commissions that really simply added two more: the Arts, Culture and Historic Preservation Commission and the Agriculture and Natural Resources Commission. And that has, from the discussions with some of the applicants and the re-applicants, and then some of the folks who have been commissioners that did not reapply, part of what I think has become an increasing challenge is that there are not enough opportunities for talented folks in our community to engage in meaningful work on commissions. And so Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma and I have been working on, and we're not ready yet, but I'm working on some potential proposed changes to the commission structure to make it more effective as a means to support the policy and programmatic work that the council is undertaking with our staff, to align the commissions better with the evolving departmental structure that we have in the city that's different from when we first incorporated, so that there are maybe not perfect, but at least tighter lines between the commissions and the council, but also, and probably most importantly, to make the commissions valuable opportunities for those who are serving on them, and to take advantage of the really rich and incredible range of talent that's in our city, and the expertise, to be sure, but also just the broad range of perspectives and smarts of various kinds. And folks serve on the commissions, and too often we hear that they love it, they enjoy the content, they think we've got a great staff team, but they're not sure that they're really being used as effectively as they might be, or meeting after meeting meeting gets canceled, or items that they thought they would see ended up going straight to the council because their meeting to the council because their meetings had all been canceled. And so we're trying to take a look at some of those issues and bring forth not a radical change in the whole thing, but some potential changes to that, which I think we'd like to discuss with the council at the retreat and at the upcoming meeting. And so what I'm intending to defer appointments rather than make appointments now and then bring that forward and then have to shuffle folks who are incumbent on boards and commissions to try to have that discussion at the strategic planning session. And then if appropriate, if the council says that determines that it wishes to move forward with some changes, then concurrently move forward with the appointments at that time. So the Planning Commission, would be unchanged. Planning Commission's a creature mostly of law anyway. And the Board of Appeals largely as well, but some of the others have created some challenges. And then, as I say, we have a lot. If you'd had the opportunity to sit down with all of these applicants, you would see just the truly impressive range of people in our community that have a lot to offer and really want to contribute. For whom there's really not unless they are under 18 or they're interested in the senior center, there's just not a lot of opportunities in our commission structure for them to participate. And as a consequence, I think like 100 people applied to be on the Planning Commission because it's seen as the only place where you really can have that kind of impact. And I think so part of what we're trying to figure out is, are there ways that we could make the other commissions, tailor them in a way that would make them also just as rewarding and just as impactful for the citizens and just as useful and as and contributing as they can be for the city as well. So. A long way to saying no appointments. It's nice, all right. All right, so that brings us to the consent agenda, which is items 2 through 11. Are there any items that any member of the council wishes to remove, or any item for separate question or comment? I'd like to have separate comment on item 4. There's 4, 6, and we have a public comment request on 9. All right, if not, then let's go to item 4, which is an update on the Bridge to Housing project and a request for supplemental funds. Before we take any of our questions, Supervisor Villegas is here, and this is a partnership that the city and the county of Yolo, really the Yolo County has been the lead on this project, and we've been very, very, very happy and proud to be partners with them. But Supervisor Villegas is here, and I thought I might invite you, if you could join us at the podium. Thanks for making it all the way here from your office around the corner. And ask if you wanted to make any comments about this topic. Mr. Johannesson introduced it briefly as well from the 2x2.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. I know you're going to take the item up. It's on consent, but I know you're going to discuss it a little bit. I just wanted to share some thoughts with you, and I know it's been a wonderful partnership that we couldn't have imagined. And by some respects, it's been a huge success if it ended today. The reality is, I think we accomplished many of the objectives that this pilot intended to accomplish. But we're hoping that's not the case. But by many respects, if it ended today, we could honestly say that it's been very successful. We relocated, as I said, 65 individuals. Currently today, there are 51 that are still in the program. Many folks felt that, it wouldn't have lasted more than a couple days. So you fast forward to where we are today, given where we started in this partnership and in this pilot in early mid-November. And the fact is that many folks have had a roof over their head that did not for years on end. And so without going into a lot of detail, the accomplishments to date, we relocated 65 people. We provided housing since mid-November. Many of these residents are now, as indicated by Councilmember Johannesson, receive mental health services and public assistance and substance abuse, all the kinds of services that traditionally they were getting, but without housing, they weren't providing a lot of impact. And I think one of the things that is going to go probably unnoticed unless it gets recognized, and I'd like to recognize it tonight, is that when we entered into this pilot as a partnership, as a true partnership, we could not have imagined the amount of groundswell support in this community. The folks in this community rallied to really try to make this pilot as successful as possible. Nobody knew where we would be, at the end of January in 2015, given where we started, but the community rallied in ways we could not have imagined. And so we're learning what's worked. We're learning what we wouldn't do again. The truth is, it hasn't all been, rainbows and puppies. There have been some tragic incidences. There have been some arrests. There have been a tragic death, as you're well aware. So we're learning a lot from this, and so I look forward to the discussion and continuing to work forward on what is a very, very good project. So thank you very much.
right, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Yeah, the suicide that occurred at the facility was a significant tragedy. But I think part of, when we began the project, one of the things that we had to overcome was just the differences between the city and the county's culture. And frankly, I know I was one of the skeptics. I wasn't the only one, but one of the skeptics about whether we could actually do that. And I have to say that the county as a whole and the county's individual agencies and the nonprofits that work with the county really stepped up. And not a lot of talking and collaboration sessions with butcher paper on the wall. I mean, they probably did that too, but they did. I mean, they really came into West Sac and acted like West Sac. Okay, let's just roll up our sleeves and go do it. And there's no way. I mean, obviously the roof was important, but it could not have. This program could not have been the success that it has been without the county really and it's all of its partners really diving in. So our performance metric at the beginning was not that we would that at the end 65 all 65 individuals would necessarily make it into full-time gainful employment with a pension and a roof and all of the problems solved. We knew that this is one of the most challenging, complicated conditions in our society that folks are dealing with and that we have to deal with, and we wanted to make a significant dent in the problem and make a difference for a significant number of people, and that has happened to date. And so I think it's been a partnership that involved a lot of risk and a lot of folks reaching out, and a lot of folks, those residents who were on the river and who came to the project. So many of them who stepped up and provided leadership within that small community and were willing to put up with a few more rules than they might have been used to, but also took advantage of all of the mental health services and the haircuts and everything else that they knew. I've only got a short amount of time to get this to work out, and so many of them stepped up to make that a reality as well. So yes, not perfect, but nobody was expecting perfect in a challenge like this, and everyone really all around the table on this stepped up to make it the success that it was. So, Mr. Johannesson. Sure.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Supervisor Villegas. I know you've been up in front on this through the whole project. I know you've walked the river, you've been at the facility the number of times, and really, it's with your support that, that's the only reason why this is happening. So I know the rest of us on council really appreciate you getting behind this. Yeah, I think it's one of the things about this population is getting folks in the system. So what we've been able to demonstrate so far, we've been able to focus those services like a laser light, not a floodlight or some dispersed light throughout the community, but a laser light to get everyone who is identified as homeless in a certain area into a place where they can apply for services, and it's worked. The health services, getting on SSI or SSDI or whatever other monthly income they can get in, health insurance, all the checkups that we've talked about. But, the other thing I know, we talked today about the 2x2, and you had mentioned this, is it was also a shelter during the cold weather. So we had that benefit of doing that. We now have a riverfront that's been cleaned up. And you could start to see how this program would fit into maybe a bigger program on addressing this. I think it's successful in terms of the place that it has in this. So the next step is going to be to get folks to housing. So we've got the vouchers going. We've got a lot of applications going. I think they've said maybe 50% of the people have applications in for vouchers. So the trick is to get housing. So the main hitch there is number one, affordable housing that we desperately need, but also the issue of a deposit, which is preventing a lot of folks. So they've got the income to potentially stay in either their place themselves or to share up, like we talked a little bit about the 2x2, but it's how to get that initial deposit. And so looking at how we can do that, to look at the long term. Because with that additional piece of getting folks into housing, that is really the solution. So we've, I think, made great strides, like you said, even if this stops today, great strides in how this program could be implemented. And as you mentioned, it's also mobilizing the faith-based communities and all interested parties in this, like a laser light, right at that one facility to provide the services there. So, I think it's been great. There's, of course, challenges, and we're not going to eliminate homelessness. But certainly, this is a really good start to, I think, a very productive course, and I really thank you for your participation.
Well, I mean, we're not having a party, but Mr. Johannesson, I mean, of all of the council members, you've definitely put the most blood, sweat, and tears into this broader issue through your work on the homelessness task force and the HDC and a lot of other forums. So I mean, you've certainly played a significant role in getting us to this point and in ensuring that keep pushing us to try to take a chance on a program like this. This was a pilot. I mean, it was a pilot program, not just to see if this worked, but also to learn a lot about strategies that we might undertake as a city or as a county, or as partners or as others. And in that sense, it really worked. And it's the first time that the city, as city government, was really playing a significant role in an effort like this, and it could have gone all kinds of wrong, and it only went a little kinds of wrong, but on the whole, I think we've learned a lot and made a difference. So, Mr. Christoph.
Yeah, is Ryan here? Ryan Collins? You're the staff person on this, I assume? Yeah. We will be getting back a report from your office, and I guess one of the things that I am concerned with, and that was what's the long-term plan? What are we going to do long-term, and how are we going to make it all work? So, that was the comment that I wanted to make as far as agenda item number 4, because I don't want to throw cold water on everything, but at the same time, this kind of a program, it's not financially sustainable as far as the city is concerned, and I think you understand all that, so just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. City Manager, do you want to add anything?
No, but we will be working with Ryan and the county on the end game, the next steps. But with the approval of this item, this program would end February 28th.
Okay. All right, thank you. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo a lot of the comments of my colleagues around this effort, and particularly thank Councilmember Johannesson for his work on this issue and the leadership of, especially the leadership of Supervisor Villegas. He has, I appreciate, during the planning of this, you assuaged a lot of concerns around it, namely mine. And I think the program has evolved into something we're proud of. And you are always the one to remind us that it was a pilot program. So appreciate your work on this, and I do support what we're moving forward with this agenda item to make sure we can learn from it. And that's one part I would ask the city manager to make sure we do, is get a report back and what we can do from here to kind of further what we can in this endeavor, because I think it's an important cause that we went through, and it was a good use of our time and resources, and we learned a lot. And just want to make sure you had our appreciation for the leadership of representing our city and making sure we were well informed of your plan. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, item 6 then is consideration of approval for a pre-qualified on-call list of consultants to provide construction management and inspection services. Mr. Johannesson?
Thank you. I mean, it's kind of sounding like a broken record, but, when I look at these on-call lists, this is where a lot of work it comes out of the city. And we've, time and time again, said, look, if we've got folks that are based here, they have employees here, work here, we need to help everybody through the situation to the extent we can. So, I mean, initially, I'd like to know who the 10 were that applied, because only 6 were selected. And one of the 6, Leaf, I think, how many full-time employees do they have? They have an office here, but what does that mean? Okay, so basically it's a storefront that they have here. Yeah, I mean, I don't really consider that, I mean, it's good that they're leasing space here in West Sacramento, but, for us, well, at least for me, it's about job creation and employing folks that are here. So, I mean, I would like to know who the other 4 were. I don't know, have to do it in this forum, but, I'm always concerned with these in particular because these are small jobs, and for some of the smaller firms, this is big for them to be able to pick this up. Maybe no one applied, I don't know, but just in terms of any kind of list like this in the future, I'd like to see, how the short list was developed. It's kind of a black hole to me, and, sure, when,
Drew, sure. Is your mic on, Drew? There.
Okay. We review them to make sure that all the required information is in them. We then have anywhere from 3 to 4 city people that are on a panel who do an independent review and evaluation of the RFPs based on the guidelines and the grading criteria that was included with the RFQ. And once that is completed, the panel will meet. We review the comments, questions, concerns, add up the total scores, and come up with the top firms based on that, assuming there was nothing in there that would preclude them from moving forward.
okay. I mean, could you tell me if the 4 that weren't selected were any of those West Sac companies?
There was one, yes.
All right.
Yes. And it finished towards the bottom of the 10, as I recall.
Based on the criteria you said in the RFP?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. All right, well, I mean,
If it is
that's,
any consolation, that firm is on one of our other on-call firms, or on one of our other on-call lists, because they're a multi-jurisdiction company.
okay, all right, okay. Well, that's all I really need for tonight. Thanks, Drew.
Sure thing.
All right. And item 9 is consideration of Resolution 15-4 authorizing the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant application for the Mill Street Pier Rehabilitation Project. And we have one request to speak on this, Mr. Castorena. No, not you, Aaron. So we had a request for public comment on this item.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, just for clarification, I noticed that item 9 on the agenda tonight that that you are contemplating submitting an application to State Parks, Land, Water, and Conservation Fund for the Mill Street Rehabilitation Project. Is this the same grant application that is planned to be applied for the Bright Park envisioning Phase 1 project? Thank you.
All right, thanks. Ms. Rivas.
Mr. Mayor, it may be the same grant, that the cutoff enough for the grant that I would like to apply for is February 3rd. It's the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I've emailed our Parks Director, Mr. Johnson, to see if this is in fact the application that we've been working with the school district on. So as soon as I find out, there was some discussion that the school district would have to apply for the grant and that we would assist them in filling out the application. But I can find out the status of that and get back to the council.
All right, so you have a pending email to him?
I'm sorry?
You have a pending email to him right now?
I did that earlier today.
Oh, and
Okay.
he's not responded to you?
No, not yet.
Oh, so what are you proposing that we should do then? Should we?
Well, since the school district is the landowner for Bright Park, they would have to submit the application. I would simply find out what the status of that application is.
But then would we be competing with ourselves?
I don't know if there's a separate category for the Mill Street Pier that would be different from Bright Park. I couldn't answer that question now.
My grant application would be for development, not for acquisition.
Are those different categories?
Yes, they have 2 separate categories.
Okay. I don't know.
But yeah, the applicant needs to hold the property in fee simple, and we were able to get a consideration because we have a state lands lease on the Mill Street portion.
So we have a couple more items this evening. Could a couple of folks on your team with expertise in this area, this specific application, this program, maybe huddle and
Absolutely.
and come back to us in just a moment? I mean, if without necessarily saying we won't compete with ourselves, we should know whether we're going to.
Absolutely. We'll reach Mr. Johnston at home, and maybe Aaron, we can meet in 238 and work that out.
All right. Sounds good. So we will, we're going to pull item 9 off consent, and we will temporarily defer item 9, and we'll return to it later in the meeting. Okay, so with that change, then, we've got the consent agenda. Mr. Johannesson is moving it.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma. Adoption of the consent agenda minus item 9. And, yeah, that's it. All right, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. That motion carries. The consent agenda is adopted. That brings us to item 12, which is a public hearing to consider the final grantee performance report for CDBG Grant 10 EDEF 7263. Ms. Collis?
Good evening. In 2010, the city received a community development block grant from the State Department of Housing and Community Development for business loans that create jobs for low-income persons, and also to start a microenterprise program that provides technical assistance to very small business owners that are low income, and to people that want to start a business that fit that category. There has been very little activity on this grant since the grantee performance report presented to the council in July, because the state made massive changes in the program and we were not allowed to use any of our grant funds since June 30th. But overall in the grant, which is now expired, we did one business loan and created 9 full-time equivalent jobs. We did a number of our microenterprise classes. 3 new businesses have opened out of those classes, and a number of business owners have now have improved their businesses, because many of the folks that attended these classes learned about marketing, financial information, legal situations, HR issues. So it's been very effective, and we're very pleased that we just received another grant. We will be continuing this program as soon as we get the grant. And just to let you know, we're already receiving interest calls for continuing the microenterprise program. I think that's thanks to our intrepid economic development staff. I think they've been out there already getting the word out for us. That concludes my presentation.
Questions for staff at this time? All right, then we're going to open the public hearing on item 12. We don't have any requests to speak, but because it is a public hearing, does anyone wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the council for any further questions or discussion or for a motion. Oh, we don't need a motion. We've received so that's it. We need no further direction. All right, thank you very much. Item 13 then is public hearing regarding the consideration and acceptance of public right-of-way and adoption of Resolution 15-3 certifying the mitigated negative declaration and approving the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan for the Village Parkway extension. Mr. Davidson. And while he's getting set up, the council has at your desks some agenda item amendments that are proposed by the city manager.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. The city is proposing a new multimodal roadway called the Village Parkway Extension Project. The Village Parkway Extension Project, the proposed project, will extend from Village Parkway to from Stonegate Drive to the new Mike McGowan Bridge. The new roadway would be built to accommodate 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, but initially striped for 1 lane, similar to the Mike McGowan Bridge. The proposed roadway improvements for this project includes a 16-foot wide landscaped median, a 6-foot bike lane, including 2 foot of gutter, making it 8 feet wide, 5-foot separated sidewalk, landscaping, utilities, storm drain, sanitary sewer, and water main. Also, we will be looking at bus turnouts and taking into consideration the expansion, the future streetcar. Also, this project's gonna we'll be utilizing 2 roundabouts in this project instead of in place of 2 signals at the intersections. Dock and Engineering studied the effect that this project may have on the environment, and they determined that the study showed that it would not significantly affect the environment. An initial study with proposed mitigated negative declaration was prepared and circulated for public review and comment, and that was done from December 22nd to January 21st. Also during that time, we held a public workshop on January 14th where we received a lot of positive feedback from the residents for this project. At the closing of the public comment period, staff received 6 comments from residents and 2 from the regulatory agencies. The 6 comments from residents kind of mostly consisted of items that were outside the scope of this project. So what we did is we passed that on to the appropriate staff member to address their concerns. Staff's intent of this public hearing tonight was to give the public another opportunity to make comments on the project and the environmental document. Also, in order to move forward with this project, the city needs to accept the necessary right-of-way from the successor agency of the redevelopment agency. In summary, staff recommends council accept the public right-of-way from the successor agency, adopt Resolution 15-3, certifying the mitigated negative declaration, and approving the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan. Approval of staff's recommended action could advance the project by up to a couple months. We would be, instead of starting construction late the summer of this year, we'd be starting approximately a month to 2 months early summer. That concludes my presentation. So if there's any questions for staff at this time.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item 13. We have no request to speak, but it's a public hearing. Does anyone wish to address the council on item 13? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing on that. Any further questions or discussion by the council?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Christoph.
Yeah, this is really a critical piece of infrastructure for the city of West Sacramento. This will take traffic off of Jefferson Boulevard, and it will also really assist with people that live behind the Nugget and near the Nugget Market and all those housing developments that have happened out there. Give them an opportunity to access the freeway, probably a little easier than it was with Jefferson Boulevard, because Jefferson, as I think most people know that travel down Jefferson early morning, gets a little compacted. And in the evening, this same thing happens. And I think this connection of Village Parkway will be something that is well received within the community itself. So.
Right. Other comments? I completely agree. I would, and I know we're far along on the project. One of the things during the Maureen Pasco Public Works era, one of the things I really loved about our West Capitol project, but also Tower Bridge Gateway, was that we were attentive to emerging innovations in street and road technology, essentially, and design. Although the green bike lanes and the separated space for the streetcar were not radical innovations, they did represent, evolution. This project is far along. We're already past the design phase, but we ought to keep doing that, and not only in the cute urban waterfront areas, but really elsewhere in the city, because transportation patterns and modes are also changing. The number, while we had originally, 20 years ago, if you had said Southport would be one of the region's major centers of cycling, you would have gotten, well, I still got laughed at. But it has become one. And so the idea that, that bicycling as a travel mode was really just going to be for the new places does not turn out to be right. And so, as we build more and more suburban roads to complete the road infrastructure in Southport, we really need to be attentive to to what we're learning both here but in other places in the country and in the world around how to design better roads that serve pedestrians and bicyclists and moms and strollers and dads and strollers better than we have with our traditional road infrastructure. So I hope it doesn't look like Southport Parkway, which was a great road, but we designed that 20 years ago. And we ought to be making some progress in terms of how we're thinking about innovation in road design as well. So, all right, if there's no further comments, is there a motion on item 13?
I'll move the
Mayor,
recommended
I
action.
move that we accept the public right-of-way from Successor Agency of the Redevelopment Agency and adopt Resolution 11-3 certifying the mitigated negative declaration and approving the monitoring and reporting plan for Village Parkway Extension Project.
All right, and that would include the amended attachment
Yes.
that the city manager has proposed.
Yes.
All right, it's been seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. So item 14 is that commission issue that we already discussed, so we're pulling that from the agenda and continuing it to a future date. Item 14 is consideration of Washington District Transit-Oriented Development and Complete Communities Strategies. Ms. Jacobson.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight, staff is recommending that council consider and provide final comments on the Washington District Transit-Oriented Development and Complete Community Strategies, and direct staff to return to council with the final published document for approval on February 18th. Although staff intended to provide the draft published document with a full analysis, graphics, and tables, unfortunately, we had serious technical challenges, and so the decision was made to go ahead with the item, receive your comments, and to provide an outline to the report. Jim Bermudez has been the project manager for this for 2 years, 2012 and 2013. Katie Yancey, Louise Collis, Mark Collier, Justin Hardy, Chris Doherty, Sandra White, and David Tilley have all contributed to sections in this strategy document. There are 2 strategies of the transit-oriented development section. It's made up of 5 elements. The complete community strategy is made up of 2 elements. The substantive policy content in this strategies document has been heard and conceptually approved by commissions and by councils. So we'll be giving a very brief presentation. After approving this strategy, all of these items will come before council again prior to enacting them within the city's regulatory framework and programs. So the council will have a further opportunity to review and shape the final changes in the city's regulations and programs. There is a 3-year preference given to the HUD grantees for financial assistance for grant awards from the federal partnership of DOT, HUD, and EPA, and then the second-tier participants of Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, National Endowment for the Arts, that will position us for competing well for federal assistance in terms of implementing this strategy. We started off by doing a very extensive analysis of baseline conditions in the Washington neighborhood. We did street-by-street walkability assessments. We documented all large trees. We did video inspections of underground utilities. Baseline circulation performance modeling was completed. We did a parcel-level analysis of vacant and underutilized properties for build-out projections. Then we went into identifying what are the major challenges or problems to achieving transit-served type of development pattern in this neighborhood. Some of the major issues and challenges that were identified was that the specific plan circulation lacks the necessary detail for designing improvements. There was no streetcar route engineered or designed. Multimodal connectivity was not sufficient. The security issues were not addressed. Parking is a critical component of circulation and TOD developments, and the specific plan had no provisions for parking management or transitioning to shared resources. The design regulations were insufficient to achieving a mixed-use urban scale transit-served pattern of development. The large Central Park concept, the land acquisition and location were not feasible. Park security was not adequately addressed. Placemaking was not addressed. We need to upzone in order to achieve the densities needed for the streetcar to be feasible. And additionally, we analyzed where changes needed to be made in our city programs. We started off with a very robust public engagement process, which is a provision that is required by the HUD funding and the cooperative agreement that implements it. The public engagement process was designed by SACOG, Bright Bodrick Community Action Network, and the West Sacramento Youth Resource Coalition. Community stakeholders like BBCAN and the Historical Society were involved in some of the grant work as well. The comments during these public engagement sessions fell into three major themes. One was an identification of the challenges, which was primarily the vacant and blighted parcels, crime problem, and lack of family-serving amenities. In terms of the district potential, it was very clear that all the residents were very bullish on their neighborhood. They feel strongly that this area holds enormous promise that will be realized. They asked for walkability and bicycle circulation improvements as a top priority and identified a desire for retail, restaurants, and family park amenities. Additionally, there was a lot of community input about creating a distinct identity for the district for branding. The team started off in terms of the transportation section with creating an urban street network, which is a street hierarchy or called a layered street network. We started by engineer designing the streetcar route, or what will be phase 2 of the streetcar, we hope. We identified the priority uses within each street and on the grid based on our master plans and other circulation in the region. This became a blueprint for preparing new street cross-sections, and it became a policy framework as we had to make trade-offs based on, we had to create mode trade-offs based on our objective of working within the built environment to the extent possible. We went from that to preparing cross-sections. This graphic depicts where we designed cross-sections. We stayed within the existing built constraints to the extent possible, protecting heritage trees. And the graphic depicts, again, it shows the streets where we designed the cross-sections. And then the other illustration is just an example of one of the cross-sections that was designed. We took those cross-sections that had been designed and we engineered them into a district-wide base map. The major infrastructure projects for circulation are engineered into this base map. The major projects which you can see are the Grand Gateway circulation is now implemented into the engineered roadway grid. The West Capitol Connections improvements, both the interim and long-term improvements, are engineered into the grid. The project to reconnect the historic grid at 6th and 7th is engineered into the grid. The bike paths that are not within the roadways, the off-roadway bike path improvements will be included in the parks plan. So aside from the major infrastructure projects that you see depicted within this new engineered base map, the good news is that the majority of the roads within the district are, some of them don't, there's not a lot of use of them, but the major improvements that we need to make for walkability and security are basically frontage, some striping for bike lanes, and new lighting. And so the great news is that we can create a great walkable neighborhood. We have beautiful canopy of trees, and that we don't have to do a lot of major roadway reconstruction except for those major infrastructure projects that I just identified. The vision for the Washington District is to create 4 small urban parks linked through a series of walkable garden streets which lead to the Riverwalk and Sacramento River. These parks are intended to reinforce circulation goals, provide neighborhood park amenities, create a concentration of uses, and shape identity for the district. Placement of art icons and enhanced landscaping is proposed along E Street and C Street to serve as wayfinding elements to the Riverwalk. Additionally, art icons will be placed along West Capitol from the existing sculptures in front of City Hall to Tower Bridge, including a new planned bicycle paseo, which was part of the West Capitol connection improvements on the prior graphic. The locations of these parks are proximate. They're not intended to denote a final location or size, but a general location, size, and program. Since council last heard the Parks Master Plan item, staff continued to work further with the property owners and worked on redesigning a new schematic to represent the Riverfront Park. The Riverfront Park is intended to have an important role in activating the Riverwalk with amenities that could draw families and youth to spill over onto the Riverwalk. It was originally designed to the edge of 2nd Street and was designed to have levels that tiered up the existing levee structure, and each tier having an amenity like a volleyball court or a swing set. After discussions and meetings with the property owners and based on that feedback, the schematic was redesigned to primarily stay within the flood easement, which is that north-south dashed line. It is staff recommendation that also the I Street Bridge top tier, if we are to protect our potential to use that as a future bicycle pedestrian path, that we locate the ADA improvements, the bike and pedestrian ramp access in this general location. And you can see that that's included in the schematic drawing. Adjacent to the bike, to this, the ADA improvements, the bike ped ramp, we have also included a half sport court and a bocce ball court adjacent to the ramp. The parks designer does indicate that a elevator would be a much more economical solution for maintaining the top tier of the I Street Bridge for bike ped use. However, in talking with staff in the city most connected with the biking community, apparently there is, it's not desirable. They don't like getting off, they don't like getting into an elevator with their bike. And so we're carrying it, it's conceptual, it's schematic, we're carrying it as a ramp currently, but as you know, all these decisions will be made as we get further into design. We analyzed build-out scenarios at a parcel level, and we completed projections based on the general plan update 2035 zoning. The actual implementation of that upzoning in the district will occur with the general plan update. The projections will provide that there'll be 3,300 residential units, 350,000 square feet of retail, and about 2.4 million square feet of office commercial. After we completed the build-out projections, we were able to fully design and engineer all of our underground infrastructure systems, stormwater, sanitary sewer, and water to serve the projected build-out. Part of the scope of work was also to complete an inventory of all the historic properties in the district. We completed this with BB Can and the West Sacramento Historical Society. Out of this inventory or this survey process, 67 structures were identified as historic. The prior 1986 survey only identified 25 structures. There's recommendations within the strategy document that we transition within the specific plan from guidelines to standards in order to preserve these historic structures for future generations, and that we establish a more robust set of standards for these designated historical structures. Additionally, in terms of the regulatory environment, the current specific plan land use is really out of date and inconsistent with transit-oriented development objectives. So there's a recommendation that we transition to form-based zoning using these design overlays, and that we revise our design standards to encourage a mixed-use urban-scale transit-served pattern of development in the neighborhood, and that we pay significant attention in that in developing those standards to the public-private interface. The key next steps in the approval of these strategy documents is that we will return to Council February 18th for final strategy approval. Following this, we will be retaining a team of consultants, planning consultants, engineering, and CEQA consultants to draft the new specific plan based on these Washington strategies. We'll complete the modeling was completed on the infrastructure, but we have to do some performance modeling on bike, ped, and intersections for transportation. We will develop and workshop the form-based zoning standards, and we need to develop policies and regulations in the specific plan for managing parking, to control surface parking lots, and to unbundle parking and transition to shared resources. We'll be implementing a parking management program in this district, as well as the Bridge District in West Capitol, for parking management and enforcement and metering. In terms of parks and recreation, we'll be implementing a river crossing public art project with Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission, the Crocker Art Museum, and the City of Sacramento. We'll be assessing permitting requirements for the extension of a lit paved path between the north terminus of the Riverwalk and the Broderick Boat Ramp, if we determine that CDBG funds are eligible for this, which we believe they are. This extension of the Riverwalk with the lit paved path was a top priority during our community meetings. And we'll be exploring the feasibility of bike ped access on the top tier of the I Street Bridge. We'll be looking to secure federal and state grants to form an infrastructure financing district, and to also complete formation of a CFD for maintenance in the district. That concludes my presentation.
All right, what's the document that we don't have? It's the complete report that would be submitted to?
It's a published strategy document, which is under our cooperative agreement with HUD. That's our grant requirement. So we need to submit that in March, and then HUD will do a 2-month audit on that document to ensure that we in fact have done the analysis and recommendations that are in the scope of work.
Okay, but that document, we would have that by the 18th?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, are there questions for Katie or the staff team? Any comments? I'll start just first with some specifics. So on the I Street Bridge, the existing I Street Bridge upper deck, actually, having seen some of these reuse projects of old rail bridges, the approach is as significant in some places as the bridge itself when it's done properly. So in addition to I think is correct in terms of bicyclists not wanting to use an elevator, there's also a real opportunity to create something that's more visually distinctive as part of that project as well. So I think that turns out to be just fine. The Paseo I think is a key, and a sort of an unbroken connection from the Tower Bridge to this downtown that connects through and with the Washington District is important. And even the park elements, and the park, I think on the park display, that's not as clear there. I think you've got several linear parks coming off the Riverwalk essentially, but not one at that location. And although it's hard now that we've permitted the West Capitol, the one that's almost, what's it called? Capitol Yards. It's harder now than it might have been otherwise with the reuse of the existing West Capitol Avenue. The potential for that unbroken connection between the waterfront and here is still a powerful one, and so to be emphasized, because I think a part of just sequencing of like where we put investments first, our best shot to encourage residential, commercial, retail, other investment in the district is bringing people in from the edges. And so rather than try to spread every dollar we have across the entire district all at once, to really think about how to draw people they're just driving around the bridge district saying, oh, I can't, it's not ready or it's not for me. Wait, what's that over there? Oh, I think I'll go look at that. Or I just came over the bridge, the new I Street Bridge or the old I Street Bridge, and I'm looking at the existing Washington Square. Oh, that looks, what's that under construction over there? So really using the power of our infrastructure investments at the edges first to draw folks in. The Paseo definitely has that kind of a potential as we think about the sequencing. And the river, at least at the moment, is not the best one of those edges because it's highly underutilized, and one of the central themes of the plan is to try to correct that. But that is the state of the world right now, that we don't have enough activity on the river to have the river really be drawing people into the Washington District. In some respects, it's going to end up having to be the opposite. There's the section on the affordable housing and career and all of that we had a vigorous discussion about last time. It seems a little bit less ambitious now, which is probably good. It's probably good enough for submitting it. I still wouldn't do I might do these things, although they're still not really a strategy. And some of them, we talked about this before, the research is pretty solid. Achieving a GED does not change your long-term economic trajectory. And so, or taking one college class without getting a certificate does not change your economic status over time, or the chances that your kids are going to skip poverty. So we need a smarter strategy in this domain. So this is good enough to submit, but we definitely shouldn't submit it and then think we're done with gentrification. We've solved it with a couple of these strategies. We need to get a much deeper, more comprehensive strategy for dealing with those key issues. Then the only general comment is, I don't know if we did this ourselves or this is our consultant, if we have one. But in the sort of kind of the introductory work around the public engagement, we've had some really robust, as you described, public engagement processes. This won't be a surprise, coming from me. I think we need to be careful not to describe the results of public engagement as the opinion of the public. If 5 or 15 people come to a workshop and they say something, it shouldn't be reflected in the report as the community thinks this. And there are several points, especially these little call-outs that are in the report, that do exactly that. And it's not fair to all the people that weren't there, but the research also is pretty clear about these engagement processes, that they tend to exacerbate different distinctions between the group that's in the room and the rest of the neighborhood that they're drawn from. And so what we're drawing kind of data points around perspectives and ideas and values, but even with 15 people in the room or 50 people in the room, it's not reaching a conclusion that the community thinks that this policy ought to happen or that this investment should be prioritized ahead of that investment. That's not you can't legitimately draw that from this, and it comes back to bite us and government all the time. And so I just think, it's subtle ways in which that's described. To say that a resident said this is one thing, but to take it the next step and say the community believes this, or this, is a road too far. And so as you take your editing pen to this over the next couple of weeks before February, if you could do a little bit more surgical editing. It's better than a lot of them that I've seen from other places, but if you can do some surgical editing to frame the public engagement properly, I would certainly appreciate that myself. But on the whole, I think this is really great work. So we applied for this money in order to try to make possible what is otherwise impossible, which is in a place like the Bridge District, where there's a handful of big property owners, and there's a lot of stuff to make infill development and to make a neighborhood happen that you have to spend money on. You got to figure out, okay, I know I have to spend money on storm drains, but what exactly would I have to do? What city, tell me exactly what's happened. So as a big property owner, I'm going to give you some money, city, to go figure that out. Or I need to know what you're going to want me to contribute to some money to fix the roads up in this area if I'm a property owner and I want to build something. So how much is it going to be? But the only way the city can do that is if we do a study that figures out what are the demands and all the needs. And so that makes it work for big property owners. It doesn't work for neighborhoods that already exist and places that already exist, and just somebody who owns just a quarter of an acre or maybe just their own house and they want to do something. And so infill development's really, really hard in places like this. And so we applied for this grant not to help us, not to help our planning department or anything like that, but to really make it possible for anyone else that might want to invest, whether somebody who lives or owns property or runs a business there now, or somebody who wants to come in the community and help out, to try to solve some of those problems in advance, do the kinds of things that big property owners would have done already. There's a huge amount of really valuable deliverables in here that for $750,000 is pretty remarkable how much value has been created that can be used by us, but as I said, primarily by folks who might want to invest in helping us in the neighborhood achieve this kind of a vision. In terms of now we know exactly, we know a lot more about the historic resources than we used to, so you won't be surprised you won't be surprised, is your thing historic or not? Are you building on historic property or not? We know a lot more about the underlying infrastructure. We know what streets are going to look like what. It's simple little mechanical things, but those are absolutely critical to any potential that private investment might drive what we'd really hope for from this district. So definitely congratulations to the staff team for a lot of complex coordinated work in order to deliver this product. And you can definitely see a lot of stuff using this work as a platform to make some big changes happen in support of the neighborhood's vision. So, Mr. Kristoff?
Yeah, the only question I had, Katie, was that this really is going to become part of the general plan.
Actually, we'll tear off the general plan update with the specific plan update and a CEQA update, which will also tear off the general plan update. And that's how it will be enacted in our regulatory environment, basically.
Okay, because I like the report. I mean, it was fairly easy to understand, and it was, because this is complicated. This isn't easy stuff, because just as the mayor has indicated, it could be a lot that gets affected, or it could be a quarter acre, or it could be 2 different lots. And so there's always the uncertainty or the give and take, and so I think this really goes a long way towards identifying what those issues are. Job well done.
Mr. Johannesson.
Thank you. Yeah, Katie, great report. On the neighborhood preservation strategy, so the recommendation is to move away from guidelines and go to more regulation.
Right.
Of that, and so that is problematic, or can be problematic in itself. And how that's being implemented, having an architectural review committee, there's bureaucracy that could potentially be set up to do something like that. But I mean, for purposes of this, I think it's good to identify that the significance of recognizing history in districts to create a sense of place. Is there any mention, or does there need to be a mention of city improvements? I mean, it's all focused on existing private improvements, but for example, streetscape lighting, those types of things that would augment what the private sector. That's a really good question.
That will be part of the public-private interface. That will be the form-based zoning. We'll also identify frontage and signage and lighting, and we'll identify areas where that historic theme, I mean, it will be developed through a public engagement process and come back before you, but based on our analysis and our working with the neighborhood, I anticipate that there will be historic themes carried out in the frontage and signage and lighting.
Okay. Thanks.
Ms. Santine?
And I'll echo my colleagues. Thank you. This is really immense work, and it's quite complicated and complex. I really appreciate the feedback that we gave at a recent meeting, that's been tackled and added to the mix in addition to all of the public feedback and input. So thank you so much for this work.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Katie. This is terrific. I've been really looking forward to this one coming back and see how it evolved. So it's terrific work that encapsulates what we know is a lot of work that has to be done, a lot of different branches of work that has to be done to kind of get to this targeted environment that we're looking for, which, Washington represents a real opportunity for us, unlike the Bridge District, because of its historic nature and its heritage. So I'm really interested. I appreciate all the kind of the action plan, and I think steps are we're going to have a plan and come back to us for final, and then it gets submitted. But I'm also interested in sort of what can we take from this and kind of keep the momentum going in the neighborhood. And there's so much enthusiasm in the area that's been generated over the last year and a half, and the emergence from local couple, a deli, local restaurant, to the urban farm, to having cyclocross on the riverfront out there, to all these things that have emerged that have started this momentum, that have given it, as you pointed out, the sense of place that Washington's established itself. So I'm really kind of looking forward to what we can take out of the plan, even though there's a lot of public engagement and process, environmental process, whatever we have to do going forward. How can we start to implement parts of these? And residents, as the mayor pointed out, even residents can do on their part to sort of always keeping this moving forward. And I recall the enthusiasm from residents when at the first kind of open house on the I Street Bridge replacement. I think you were there, and just the amount of that infrastructure received from residents, just giving it a rounding applause, like let's get this going. And I think they see it as well. And folks even saying, hey, when can we get that infrastructure financing district going so we can fund these things? It's like, okay, let's get right on that. But I think, and I saw some of your recommendations about how we might want to look forward to acquiring properties, and all those are kind of things that I'm keeping an eye for. So it doesn't have to wait, submit the plan, and let's just wait for feedback. We can get going on some of this stuff. So I'm kind of interested in what might happen after that and what we can take from it. So anyway, good work, and I'm really excited by this.
Yeah, I think one of the great things that we've learned from this process, and staff too, is that this is totally doable, right? It could have been that we went and did this work and realized, well, what you would need to make the transit work is densities that are not achievable, or that there's some plume of pollution underneath the whole thing. I mean, the number of potential fatal stops were enormous, and as I think one example was the road network that Katie was describing. It's a kind of a surprise, because this is the first area that we've dealt with in the city where the bones are so good in this neighborhood. Margaret McDowell and friends did a great job of laying out Washington in the gold rush, and so the bones are good. We have a lot to work with and not a lot of insurmountable hurdles. And as you say, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma, a lot of momentum that's already begun. And so I know the staff, whether it's on arts or other stuff, has already been they have been waiting for us to vote on this next month to begin trying to use it as a platform for implementation as well. So I think we all share the enthusiasm of the neighbors and the residents about what's going to be possible as we go forward. So thanks very much. All right, so this item is just for feedback tonight, which we've given some, and then it'll be back on February 18th for adoption. All right, thank you very much. All right, and that reminds me, I completely forgot in my report, at Conference of Mayors, the most important thing, which is that we won our second national award in 12 months. The city was successful in winning the Grow 1000 Gardens, Scott's Miracle-Gro Public Gardens and Gardens and Public Spaces Award. We're one of 4 cities across the country to win that award. This one comes with a cash grant to support the work at 5th and C and the expansion of urban farming throughout the city. So we will be having an event and recognition ceremony soon. So we'll get the details out. But it was I mean, I think after we won the livability award, that maybe this doesn't seem as exciting, but it is. I mean, it continues to show West Sacramento and not just the city, but our community and our neighbors and our community partners really leading the country on important stuff. So we were very proud of it. The city manager was present, as well as Mary Kimball from the Center for Lands-Based Learning. We're both at the award ceremony as well. So. Thanks. All right, council calendar, Ms. Richardson.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we're going to go back to item 9.
Right, okay, yes, sorry. Item 9.
No, I'll let Aaron come up as well, but staff did huddle with our Parks Director, and it's apparent that for the Land Conservation Fund, that a local agency, so a city, county, or JPA, would have to be the applicant. Bob Johnson is working on this, but I think there's some pretty big hurdles in order to submit an application by February 3rd. Staff would recommend that we take advantage of Aaron's good work on the Mill Street Pier application, have council review, and if you like it, is to support that resolution. However, if we can work out the issues, including a land conservation easement on the school district property, and we could actually submit an application, that we would recommend that we would hold a special meeting and rescind the application, because we would be competing with a Bright Park application, but that we would rescind the resolution that you might approve tonight, and then substitute it with a support for resolution for Bright Park at a special meeting prior to the submittal on February 3rd. But there are many issues that need to be addressed with the school district in that short period of time.
I mean, when you say, you mean Tuesday? Is that
Tuesday,
Yes.
prior to Tuesday.
All right.
3 weeks from Tuesday? You wish, huh?
Okay, that might be more feasible tomorrow, Friday, or Saturday.
Right.
When we happen to be together, so, okay. All right, so you're asking us to approve this with that?
Our recommendation would be to, again, to take advantage of Aaron's great work and support that application. If an application can be prepared and would be competitive and meet the application requirements, that we would ask that we held a special meeting to then rescind this application and substitute it with an application for Bright Park. However, we're going to really need school district staff cooperation as well to pull that off.
Well, okay, so we would need that. We would need somebody's analysis as well. I mean, because we're not, we're not doing the reason we're raising these issues around Bright Park is because we want to get the funding for Bright Park, but we don't want to simply submit an application for Bright Park for symbolic reasons either.
Right.
We want to win. We want a solid chance of winning money that can come into our community to make the neighborhood better. So if it's just that Bright Park is eligible, but we kind of have a halfway application together, I don't think we'd want to come back and do that if this is going to be a competitive application.
Absolutely.
But as you indicated, if we we in the school district can come up with by Tuesday.
It'd be a long shot, but we'll make every effort to pull that together.
A competitive application, then I think we'd be, I know I'd be willing, it sounds like the council would be willing to come back in order to to take action.
I'm supportive of that with the caveat that the focus of this has been around for at least some time. The mayor has stated about this, the Bright Park, that has support at the council. And so I'm supportive of the fact that if it's got to be competitive, I want to win. But we shouldn't be waiting a week before it's due to make that determination. And so as much focus as we put on it next year, if whatever cycle, whatever grant it had, this has been out there for some time. So,
Understand.
and so we need to give it that focus to have a winning grant to begin with and working through these issues. So I'll stop there.
Yep. Well said. All right, so then if there are no further discussion on this item, is there a motion on it with that understanding? It's moved by Mr. Johannesson.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma. This one requires a roll call vote?
Yes, it does.
According to the city clerk, so please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Kristoff?
Yes.
Councilmember Sandin?
Aye.
Councilmember Johannesson? Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma?
Yes.
And Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes?
Thank you.
All right, the motion carries. All right, now, council calendar, Mr. Fisher?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, tomorrow, as you know, starts the council's annual strategic planning session, and the council members should have received both two binders from staff with the materials, and your individual appointments are in those binders, and I think you have them on your calendar. Also, not on your calendar is an invitation that we received from Sacramento City College that they're having a 5th birthday or anniversary tomorrow from 4 to 5:30 across the street. So that's going to be happening there. On Monday, we do have a city school 2x2 at 5:30, and I believe the Bright Park is on the agenda as a continuing discussion item. And then finally, I just wanted to alert the council that on February 9th, SACOG is going around and having a briefing with all of the elected officials on the MTP/SCS plans. And that's going to take place at the Transportation District at 5:30 on the 9th. And elected officials from the county are invited to attend that. And that's all. Thank you.
Is there another countywide electeds convening also that LAFCO is?
Yeah.
There's going to be a
Shared
shared services meeting on the 26th of February, and I believe that's in the morning. I don't have the time for that.
And a LAFCO call that, or?
Pardon?
That's, LAFCO's the one that called that?
LAF was the one they're trying to put together a group of people to kind of set the new direction for shared services.
I mean, my only concern is that, and I'm a board member at SACOG doing the same thing, but, the authority of other entities to unilaterally call meetings of us, essentially, by saying we have declared that there's going to be a countywide convening or a region-wide convening of all elected officials. I mean, we should have a role to be playing in that. So I hope Mr. Kristoff, as a LAFCO commissioner, has been consulted, and I guess I was at SACOG. But I could definitely see this sort of thing spiraling out of control, where there's one of these all the time, and there definitely has a lot of downsides and Brown Act issues and other things as well. So we just need to be cognizant of that. So, okay. Any other questions on the calendar? City manager reports.
Mayor and council, we've discussed this before, but the Code for America Fellows will arrive to West Sacramento on February 2nd, Monday. There'll be a good tour of City Hall, kind of get them oriented. We've got the staff offices all set up. There will be an ag tour with the fellows that SACOG is going to lead on the 4th, and there's also an effort to coordinate some sort of media event later for next week, and as the details get proposed, we'll propose that to you and the rest of the council.
Do we have any events where the council will be meeting the fellows? Or?
We could set that up. Yeah.
I think we ought to have something where
Absolutely.
that's occurring. So, okay. Any questions on the city manager report? City attorney report? Staff direction from members of the council? We have no future agenda item requests. Mr. Johannesson moves, and Ms. Sandin seconds that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.